Good morning. It is Thursday morning at 10 a.m. This is Pastor Rick from Stony Lane Church in North Kingstown, Rhode Island. We are here to do a recap of last night's Bible study. We actually have a Bible study here. Excuse me while I fix that. We actually have a Bible study here at Stony Lane Church every Wednesday from 6:30 to 8 o'clock. The first 40-ish minutes we take prayer requests and have a time to pray for them, and then the last 40 to 50 minutes we do a Bible study which lasts until 8 o'clock. We are in the book of Proverbs, going verse by verse. So today we're going to look at Proverbs 6 verses 1 through 11. I'm going to read verses 1 through 3. We actually covered this last week, but it brings us into the next couple of verses which kind of complete this thought. So Proverbs 6, 1 through 3, Solomon speaking to his son. It says, my son, if you have put up security for your neighbor, if you have struck hands in pledge for another, if you have been trapped by what you have said and snared by the words of your mouth, then do this, my son, to free yourself, since you have fallen into your neighbor's hands. Go and humble yourself, press your plea with your neighbor. So we saw last week that this is primarily, I believe, talking about what we would call today co-signing on a note. We have seen that co-signing on a note is not a sinful thing to do, but boy, we need to be really, really careful when we do it, because we could become responsible for that, meaning we could, if the person that you're co-signing for defaults on it. We saw that if this does happen and the person does default on it, what Solomon is saying is go to them humbly. We saw that the normal reaction would be anger, but we always want to do things God's way according to his word, and so the instruction here is to go humbly, is to deal with the anger and humbly go to them. And we're going to see what we should do when we go to them. So verse 4 says, allow no sleep to your eyes, no slumber to your eyelids. This is basically Solomon saying, like, don't procrastinate. Procrastination can be a terrible thing. The old saying, I don't procrastinate, I'd just rather do it later. Well, there are things that we should be very diligent about. And this would be one of them. Verse 5, free yourself like a gazelle from the hand of the hunter, like a bird from the snare of a fowler. This is just a great word picture here. We've probably all seen things on television, YouTube, about animals that get trapped. Even sometimes they get trapped on their own. They try to jump over a fence in someone's yard, like a chain link fence, and get their foot stuck in the fence. And even under those conditions, when someone tries to help them, because of the fear they have for man, they fight and kick and even hurt themselves more. They don't realize that we're trying to help them, but you get the picture of this flailing and this, just kind of moving around quickly and even hurting themselves in the process of getting away. Well, what Solomon is saying here is free yourself in the same way that we see that. Work hard at it. And we kind of concluded that we need to be good stewards of the resources that God has given us. And again, co-signing a note, not necessarily it's not a sinful thing to do, not necessarily a terrible thing to do, but again, eyes wide open. I think the conclusion that we've somewhat drawn from wisdom is, if you're going to co-sign a note, then be willing to lose whatever amount you're co-signing for. Personally, I would keep it very small. I think co-signing on someone's phone for a 2-year contract, that's a bigger deal, possibly. I have heard of someone who co-signed on a house for somebody, and that just didn't go well. It almost bankrupted the person. So again, Solomon is saying, like, if you're going to do it, eyes wide open, maybe be willing to lose it. If they default, then go to them humbly and speak to them about it. But then he says in verse 6, he's not really shifting gears here. It almost looks like he's shifting gears. He says, go to the ant, you sluggard, and consider its ways and be wise. And so the ant in Scripture is known as an example of industry, diligence, and planning. There's so many things we can learn from the ants. They are very diligent. They are very industrious. They can carry like 20 times their body weight. They work hard. They never, how is it? They never hinder each other's progress. That's just a great thing to think about. And so we should be that way. We should be diligent. We should be planning ahead. And so one of the things we can do, if you've co-signed a note and the other person is defaulting on that note, then we can actually counsel that individual to consider what we're going to see in these next couple of verses as well. For them to be more active, to take a second or a third job, to not be slothful, which we'll see coming up the next verse or two. So let's read those verses, and then we'll tie this together more. So again, verse 7, go to the ant, you sluggard, consider its ways and be wise. It has no commander, no overseer or ruler, yet it stores its provisions in summer and gathers its food in the harvest. And so, again, the ant is a picture of industry, diligence, and planning. But it also, verse 7 says, it has no overseer or no commander or a ruler. I think we spoke last night that we, as believers, should be self-starters. We should not need someone looking over our shoulders to do what's right. Ultimately, God is always watching anyway. Colossians 3:22 through 24 speaks to this when Paul, speaking to the church in Colossae, speaks to slaves to just always do good, not just when your owner or your boss is watching. Well, we can certainly see the application to that, where we need to be diligent, we need to be self-starters. And then verse 8, it says, it stores its provisions in summer and gathers its food at harvest. Interestingly, when it says it stores its food in summer, we certainly know that that's the best and most diligent time, or it's the best time to do that. But it also is the hottest time of the year. And so the ant doesn't complain about the heat. The ant just gets out there and does what needs to be done. We saw last night how easily we can give ourselves excuses to not be diligent. And again, we could speak these words of truth into the person that we've co-signed for, to realize that if you're not doing your best to be a man or a woman of your word, knowing that I co-signed this for you, believing that you would follow through, you can encourage them in that as well and speak to that. So now we're going to maybe shift gears a little bit. Verse 9. These do tie together, though. It says, how long will you lie there, you sluggard? When will you get up from your sleep? Verse 10, a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. Verse 11, and poverty will come on you like a bandit, and scarcity like an armed man. Interesting phrase there in those three verses tie together, and we will end there in terms of not going any further in Proverbs 6. But a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands. I like the way that is rendered there, because I think we can, in our minds, make it okay that we're only sleeping a little, and we're only slumbering a little, and then a little more, and then a little more. I think we can justify that in our minds, where what we do is we're not sleeping a long time, we're not slumbering a long time, we're sleeping or slumbering a lot of littles, which equals a long time. And so we got to be careful that we don't kind of fake ourselves out, that we don't deceive ourselves into thinking something isn't what it is. And then he says, verse 11, and poverty will come on you like a bandit, and scarcity like an armed, what does it say? Like an armed man. Listen, poverty has no mercy. Poverty shows no mercy. I think what happens often is when we begin that road of maybe being lazy, maybe being slothful, a little sleep, a little slumber, we think we're doing good, or we don't think we're doing as bad as we really are, and then all of a sudden it comes on us like a bandit, comes on us quickly. We read Isaiah, if you're taking notes here, I believe it's 30, verses 12 to 14. It talks about this high, tall wall that is cracking and crumbling, and it just breaks in an instant. There's this, like, you know it's coming, and it's not there yet, but then it just breaks in an instant. I think that's what we're seeing here. Because verse 11 says, and poverty will come on you like a bandit. A bandit comes on quickly and by surprise. And also scarcity like an armed man. And so what we see here is we see the necessity for diligence. We see the necessity to not fake ourselves or deceive ourselves if we are being kind of lazy, if we're spending too much time in front of a screen. We see the instruction here to think carefully before we co-sign, even if we ever do. We see the necessity for not being lazy. In the Old Testament, we saw one of the things that God wanted people to do if they had a farm is to not gather around the edges and maybe leave the gleanings so that the poor people could come and do that. But the interesting thing there is he only told the farmer to leave it. He didn't tell the farmer to pick it up and take it to the poor. The poor had to come work for it. So even then, God wasn't instituting the concept of laziness. He was instituting the concept of help the poor, but the poor need to come and work hard to get what they need. And so good stuff here. I will be back again on Tuesday to go over this Sunday's message, Tuesday at 10 a.m. Thanks for being here. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and God bless.